tragic life and crimes of Aileen Wuornos, America's first female serial killer. Aileen Wuornos, the serial killer, experienced sexual abuse and abandonment as a teenager. A felon who earned her keep as a highway sex worker in Florida murdered the man who picked her up in 1989. She had been sentenced to death row for the murders of at least 5 additional men. Wuornos was executed by lethal injection in 2002 despite concerns about her mental competency. Her life has been the subject of numerous media representations, including documentaries, books, and even an opera. Wuornos was born in Rochester, Michigan on February 29, 1956, and she spent her formative years in the Troy area, to the south. Wuornos' childhood was marred by tragedy. While her father was in jail for child molestation, he committed suicide, and while she and her older brother Keith were being raised by their grandparents, their mother abandoned them. However, Wuornos' grandfather was said to be a terrifying, violent force, and her grandmother was said to be an alcoholic. Later, Wuornos claimed that her grandfather sexually abused her and that she had sex with her brother. She had the baby boy when she was just a teen, but she had to give him up for adoption. Wuornos, during her formative years, was similarly uprooted from her home and spent time in the wilderness. Wuornos, a former state ward, is now an adult who lives as a vagrant by hitchhiking and performing sex work. Her mid-1970s arrest for assault and disorderly conduct led her to Florida, where she met and married wealthy yachtsman Lewis Fell. They tied the knot in 1976, but Fell ended the marriage shortly after Wuornos was arrested for another fight. 10 years later, after Wuornos had committed numerous additional crimes, she began dating 24-year-old Tyria Moore in Daytona, Florida. It was later discovered that Wuornos had killed at least 6 men along Florida highways between late 1989 and late 1990. Richard Mallory's body was discovered in a junkyard around the middle of December 1989, and the bodies of 5 other men were subsequently found there over the course of the following months. Fingerprints and palm prints found in the wreckage of a car driven by another missing man, Peter Seams, helped police identify and locate Wuornos, who had used multiple aliases, and more. While Moore was located in Pennsylvania, Wuornos was arrested in a bar in Port Orange, Florida. Moore struck a deal with prosecutors to spare Wuornos from prosecution, and in the middle of January 1991, Wuornos admitted to her over the phone that he was responsible for the murders. The sensational nature of the crimes helped spark a media craze surrounding the case. Wuornos testified that she killed Mallory in self-defense after he raped and assaulted her. Mallory had previously served a decade in prison for sexual assault, which she did not disclose in court. Although she later recanted her statements, she initially claimed that her justification for the deaths of the other 5 men was self-defense. A jury found Wuornos guilty of first-degree murder in the Mallory case on January 27, 1992, and she was sentenced to death. Over the course of the following months, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murders of the 5 other men for whom she was on trial and was sentenced to death on all counts. She later admitted to the murder of Seams, whose remains were never found, in an off-court setting. Wuornos, after 10 years on death row, decided to dismiss her appeals attorneys who were trying to get her executed sentence postponed. A court-appointed attorney was worried, however, because Wuornos had made statements that seemed to suggest she was severely out of touch with reality. Following the findings of 3 psychiatrists that she was competent to understand the death penalty and its justification in 2002, Florida Governor Jeb Bush lifted a temporary stay of execution. On the morning of October 9, 2002, Wuornos was put to death by injection. Supposedly, her final words were, "I'm taking a trip with The Rock and will be back on June 6 to celebrate Independence Day with Jesus." In the same vein as the film, complete with a massive mothership. Eventually, I'll be back. Wuornos was cremated, and her ashes were scattered beneath a tree in her hometown. The film industry has paid close attention to Wuornos' story. The British filmmaker Nick Broomfield made 2 documentaries about serial killer Aileen Wuornos, The Selling of a Serial Killer, 1993, and Aileen, Life and Death of a Serial Killer, 2003, the latter of which was co-directed by Joan Churchill. In Monster, 2003, written and directed by Patty Jenkins and co-starring Christina Ricci as Selby Wall, a character inspired by Tyria Moore, Charlize Theron, who is often known for a glamorous screen persona, underwent a major physical and emotional transformation to portray Wuornos. While the film was met with some controversy over the accuracy and scope of its details, Theron won an Oscar for Best Actress for a performance that was riveting, grueling to watch, and hailed by critic Roger Ebert as a cinematic milestone. The creative community remains fascinated by Wuornos' story, as evidenced by Lily Rabe's portrayal of Wuornos in the fall 2015 season of American Horror Story.